Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. It's a real pleasure to be hosting my first ever BC Strategies podcast. And I have a phenomenal group of analysts to interview, ask questions of, get opinions from. We have a great topic, so we're going to be looking at how the machine customer is going to be changing customer service. My first question, John, I think I will single you out on this one. What exactly counts as a machine customer versus, a normal AI agent, chatbot? How are we defining that difference?
Well, Chris, I would characterize this as something akin to what we, refer to as agentic, for starters, and also being conversational. And that's why that term machine can be a little, I think, misleading. We're not at the point yet where I'll have my bot talk to your customer service agent bot, but that's where a lot of this is heading. We're probably a few years out from that. But I think the idea here is that the machine aspect of this is ways of automating these interactions, but in a way that still feels personal and authentic. Efficiency alone is great. That's why we're doing this, but we also have to, we have to keep the acronym of the week, human in the loop, H, right, HITL. We have to keep that front and center still because as long as customers are humans consuming products and services, we're going to need that. There could be a time when bots are only buying products and services for bots, but we're still around. I think. I think.
Well, we hope so anyway. And Robert, you had some examples of this. So where are you seeing machine customers existing today? So AI taking action on behalf of consumers today. What examples have you seen, and how do you see that then evolving, in that next few year time frame where we're starting to see some of those coming in?
Thank you, Chris. Yes, I did a at Enterprise Connect in March. I did a presentation on deep fakes and their effect on enterprise communications. And one of the examples, it actually wasn't a fraud, but it was a human-like agent that had called and negotiated a loan with a financial institution, and only after the call did the call center realize that it was non-human. But what we've had for a long time, in the same way that we started with narrow AI solutions, single function AI solutions, and now we have more general AI with large language models. These machine customers have been around for quite a while as narrow solutions. You have tools that will automatically unsubscribe you from an email list. That's a very simple, easy example. You also have tools that will manage and delete your streaming media subscriptions, and then payment apps that will let you take your change and invest in stocks and bonds, basically. So the AI agent that calls the contactor sounded like a human. It has happened, but for now it's an outlier. And that gives organizations some time to really strategize. So the flip side of that, though, is even though an organization may have time to deal with this incrementally, a lot of them are going to deal with the worst way possible. They're going to find ways to block the subscription cancellation bots and all these things, other tools. At the same time, they're going to have these high-minded whiteboarding sessions on how to handle human-like AI agents, at the same time not dealing with the problem at hand. My own city, Long Beach, did the same sort of thing. They sent out a citywide survey on how we can become more of a digital city, and it's open to suggestions from everyone the very same year that they essentially banned self-checkout cash register machines. So yeah, I see a lot of companies taking that path, shelving the actual problem, and then try strategizing on something hypothetical.
Absolutely. I think just very quickly adding from my side as well, we are seeing a little bit on the digital side. So, I've had some examples from customer care organizations where they'll say, I start having a chat with a customer and suddenly the grammar all changes, the spelling changes. It goes from the customer to being this chat GPT copy and pasted response. And we see that in email, we see that in chat, but it's still very early days, to your point, Robert. It's just starting to come in. But okay, so Beth, what changes then when companies have to serve both the human customer but also the machine customer at the same time? How is that changing the dynamic?
That's really interesting because for years the organizations have been relying on tools and automation to sort of deflect, as they call it, right? So we're using that to move you off. And yet, when you want to cancel, then you have to talk to somebody live, and they're going to try to talk you out of it, and then you got to talk, right? All of that. So now what we're seeing is that the customers are going to be able to automate some of that. And what that does is it removes some of the emotion, right? I'm getting frustrated talking to you. Well, my bot is not. And so they'll keep in that loop over and over and over again until they get success. And at the same time, they're able to seek out perhaps discounts that the organization wasn't aware they had. And, they can go out and find things in contracts and take advantage of them, and then multiply that by however many interactions they're having. So what that really means for the organizations that are customer facing is where in the past we've been designing for a user interface that's easy for a human to navigate, easy for an agent to navigate. Now we have bots speaking bot language and sometimes creating their own language and kind of bypassing all of that. So what the organizations really need to start focusing on now, as Robert says, is governance, guardrails. We have an AI Bytes segment that we just put out on LinkedIn this week showing how guardrails can be overcome. But to build guardrails, you have to normalize your data, you have to identify your processes and document your processes and have all of that. So really the time to be building that foundation is now.
Absolutely. And Blair, I think you had some views then on what's then happening to interaction volumes that a contact center has to handle, and also how some of those challenges are then playing out, how the brand can handle some of those challenges that Beth was referring to.
Yeah, so volume can go either way. It's kind of interesting because right now, consumers might not bother doing certain things because it's, too frustrating or too time consuming. It's like, every time there's a delayed shipment, well, should I bother contacting the company or not bothering? But if you have an AI agent doing it, it's like, sure, the AI agent can, take care of all of these things. So interaction volume is going to go up, or transaction volume is going to go up, but it's not going to be the human doing it. It's going to be the bot or the agent doing it on behalf of the human. So we're going to see a lot more volume, but it's not going to be human. It's going to be, bots, because, they can wait, they can, hang on. So we're not going to see human volume going up, but certainly the interaction volume is going to go up. And also because these AI agents, they can constantly be on, like, kind of like the way I use Kayak, it's always monitoring price changes for flights or whatever. So these AI agents, they're always going to be, looking at policy changes, looking at pricing, looking, evaluating different competitors. So they're kind of always on. So that's going to be a very different type of model. So it's going to be interesting for companies because they're going to have to account for both, human interaction and then this AI interaction. So they're going to need basically two different tracks. So they're definitely going to need, new operational cost models, new ways of looking at how to do negotiation and changing those frameworks. So it's going to be, very different. And, some of these companies could really be facing, massive operational load from these AI agents.
Yeah, that's a great point. I just wanted to interject. It reminds me, Blair, about most of the personal assistant kind of tools or LLMs I've used. They create work. You ask it a simple business question. It says, "Would you like me to help you develop a strategic plan?" So it's more likely, like you said, that the AI agents are going to create more inquiries that a customer wouldn't bother with. That's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And go on, John.
I just want to add, Blair, to what you're saying. We're not there yet, I know, but it's not a big leap to start imagining how, as customers who are AI savvy and want to have some fun on the internet, there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't create multiple machine customer agents that reflect different customer personas, right? So you might want to have,
good cop, bad cop.
Yeah, exactly. So be the hard-nosed negotiator type, or be the soft, empathetic type, and start playing with that and to see which gets the better results depending on what outcome you're trying to get. And then, of course, the vendors will have to, figure out their counter strategies with their AI agents to anticipate, oh, it's persona X today for this customer. We're going to put on our bot agent persona X as an agent, customer agent. You can just see where this is going to go. But the bigger question, I know Opus has talked about this for a while, is you need some kind of control layer, don't you, Chris? I mean, because this bot thing is going to get so out of control. Who is going to manage all of this?
It's a really good point, and it's a real challenge for both the bot vendors. So if you look at OpenAI, they are looking to enable their AI to have browser use. They're looking to enable it to have phone use. They're looking to enable it to be able to access in a general fashion all the different tools. Now, it can do that to varying degrees of success today. Whether OpenAI will be able to crack that question is it's an open debate. But there is also an argument that as a brand, you can, to an extent, provide your customer with an assistant that is a chatbot. You can have, hey, just talk to our chatbots. Why would you need to go to OpenAI to ask for this? Ask our chatbot. Now that requires the consumer to choose your chatbot over the OpenAI chatbot, and there's a real question then of the incentivization for OpenAI is to make the experience better for the consumer. The incentivization for the brand chatbot is to direct the customer to the resolution of the brand's choice. So there's some real challenges there, but it also impacts that separation between sales, between marketing, and between service, because you suddenly have a whole new gatekeeper between you and the customer. So, Kevin, what do you think that will do for brands? How will that have an impact? What changes then?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And I think probably we don't know the full answers. But, I think increasingly, if you look at when it's really, my agent talking to your agent, I think, so for the first part, I mean, customers, whether it's in business or in personal, you don't want to have a proliferation of different agents. So I think everybody is vying to be the top of the stack, to be the AI agent that you wake up to and then you use throughout the day, whether that's OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude or Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini. Everybody wants to be that. So I think that's the big battle you're going on, you're seeing. But when it is my agent talking to your agent, I think there are some interesting side effects that we might be able to predict. Interestingly, sales cycle time could go down because, if it takes me a while to research, even when I use, AI, it takes me a while to research and compare. But maybe now, my AI agent does this much more quickly, whittles down the choices to, 2. And so maybe now I only talk to these 2 vendors if I need to even talk to them. So that compresses sales cycles, which is kind of a good thing for vendors. I think the other thing that you're going to see is trust signals are going to change. So now I go to a website. Sometimes I see testimonials. I see maybe if it's I might see some efficacy studies or whatever. But my AI agent is going to go and validate all of those, right? Because I think a lot of times some of those testimonials are made up, right? But my AI agent is going to go, and if you put on your site things that are false, the AI agent is going to penalize you when it's looking for that compare and contrast. And also things like those super detailed terms and conditions that, in the fine print say things that nobody ever reads. Well, I'll tell you what, my AI agent is happy to read those. And if if you have a competitor that has more straightforward terms and conditions or not any hidden fees in the, in the fine print, humans, we never bother, but the AI agent is going to, notice that and rate you lower if you've got these secret conditions. So I think, organizations are going to have to, as been mentioned by a bunch of the other BCStrategies experts, both serve humans, but also increasingly start to serve humans using AI chatbots or AI assistants, and then eventually, set things up so my AI can talk to your AI. So fun times ahead.
Very interesting times. Go on.
And what does that do for loyalty? I think most people tend to stay loyal to the organization they're attached to simply because of inertia, not enough time in the day. And yet you call in and you hear, oh, we value you as a customer. You know what? The AI bot doesn't care. It's just going out and looking for deals. And overcoming that inertia, I think, will cause a lot of shift.
I also wonder about customer choice. Like what happens to boutique brands or mom and pop shops that don't have the sophisticated AI? Are they just going to be out of the picture?
Well, I think yes, maybe it's just like every company had to have a website, because if you didn't have a website, even the small mom and pop shops, if you don't show up on Google Maps, or if you don't have a website, nobody's going to even consider you. So I think that eventually every small business is going to have something that is accessible by and responsive to AI agents.
Yep.
And I do think it could be an advantage for those mom and pop shops where, if you have a mom and pop shop that just happens to deliver a great experience, but is on page 33 of Google because it's got no search engine optimization and so on. Well, your AI doesn't care. It will read 33 pages of Google. It will read, it'll do that research to find this is the thing that actually really matches to your preferences, Mr. Customer. So I'm hopeful that it will be actually a good thing for those smaller brands where, before they had to really fight to be noticed, and now it's easier to be noticed.
The customer can be more specific and say, look for these types of brands that do, personalized care, or more, artsy or whatever.
That's an irony, isn't it? You could have your agent find me a company that I can actually talk to, and then you make the real phone call. I think that actually one of the other things I thought of that is companies need to decide if they want to be a brand that customers want to talk to. Because if humans would rather have an AI assistant contact, you've probably already lost the plot. And I know I talked to earlier about this, offline, but Starbucks is a good example. People never in the early 2000s went to Starbucks for the coffee. Half the people there actually were buying milkshakes that was disguised as coffee, but you had the whole destination and the whole experience. And now it's a commodity. People will order, DoorDash. They don't care whether they get, whether they go in and get the Starbucks coffee anymore. You don't feel like you've missed out on anything. And so I would say to companies that are panicking over this, why are you panicking? You're the ones who started it. They started with the bots and automating everything. So you have to decide if you want to be a brand that customers want to talk to, but then you have to decide first if you want to talk to your customers, because you haven't been talking to your customers for the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think, Robert, you bring up a great point, and building on that Starbucks example, they went to mobile ordering, and as you said, then there was no interaction. And I know the Starbucks CEO was just at Cisco Live, and he was talking about how they're going back to making Starbucks again be a destination. So right to your point, I know, like, I shout out to Amex Platinum. When I call them, they answer super quickly and they're super helpful. And that's the only credit card company I would ever choose to talk to, because I know they're going to help me and they're going to be responsive. Everybody else, I would sick my AI agent to wait, half an hour on hold or what have you. So great point in terms of customers will have to, or companies will have to figure out if they are going to be responsive to customers talking to them.
And I do think there will be an element as well of my bot will talk to your bot, we'll establish the fact, and then we as people can sit down and resolve. I mean, I think I can speak for everyone here. None of us want to go and call up whichever airline we're on, and this is not singling out any airline, but no one wants to go and call your airline and say, hey, my flight was cancelled and I need to get here at this time, and these are my requirements. That you just want that handled for you. So I fully get that. You want to be a brand that customers want to talk to, but there are some things where you just want the bot to establish the baseline fact, and then you can have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
And hopefully another advantage that we will get from the machine customer movement.
Well,
Now,
so there will be. Oh, I was going to say. So there's going to be an evolution, or things are. So right now, or there'll be different stages that these bots are going to go through. So yeah, right now it might be that type of thing. Fixing problems and doing basic types of things, and then acting as an assistant. But then more and more, it will be more autonomous as we go through.
Yeah.
But I think initially it's going to be really more of an assistant rather than really autonomous, and it's going to be a long time till we get to the real autonomous stage.
So where's Martha Beyer on this call? I think legal will have a lot to say about how far these bots can go. Are they considered sentient? What happens if they have a improper, or I don't know, let's just say strong disagreement with the other bot and calling it names and whatever, or lying or trying to preserve itself. The road goes on and on with that stuff.
On the other hand, the idea of exchanging facts as opposed to opinions is a little bit appealing, right? If everybody has a common understanding of what's true, it's a lot easier to move forward. But not everybody wants to put out what's actually true. They like to obfuscate a little bit, to borrow Martha's word.
And hopefully the bot will help ease some of that from the customer side. If it's an OpenAI bot, or if it's a Google bot, or if it's a Claude, whatever it is, hopefully it will encourage customers to be honest about what's happened a little bit more and present the facts as they are. That maybe I'm too much of an optimist, but that would be my hope. But John, I wanted to riff on that legal side a little bit, because there is a real question here that comes up for the contact center in general and for the business of how do you actually authenticate a customer when it's their machine customer that's reaching out to you. So how do you handle that authorization safely? How do you prevent fraud? How do you recognize, hey, this is OpenAI acting on Chris's behalf rather than someone pretending to be OpenAI acting on Chris's behalf, or someone's AI pretending to be OpenAI acting on Chris's behalf? And I'm going to open that up to the whole floor. Who would like to jump in first?
I think there's certainly things that don't work, like voice authentication. Nobody should be using that. I know for a while financial institutions were big on that. If your financial institution says, "Hey, Kevin, we've authenticated you based on your voice," that would scare me today. I think that the normal thing, right? You've got the two-factor authentication. Still there's going to be, whatever, I sent you this code via email. Obviously, an agent working on my desktop I could grant access to that. I think, sending a text message to my phone, that becomes, maybe that's friction. Maybe that's a way to kind of stop these AI agents, because it's a little more difficult if you're not using your mobile to kind of run the agent or what have you. But I think that, one of the challenges will be, what do companies do when the customer claims it wasn't them that bought 52 dozen of something? And we already see examples of that, where kids on, I don't know, shopping networks or somehow got on the iPad, got mom or dad's iPad and bought things, because there was the one click to buy on Amazon or what have you. But I think that will certainly become an excuse. My AI agent bought it, I didn't, right?
Yeah.
So
kind of like Stonehenge and Spinal Tap, right? For those who remember.
I'm thinking back to the banking example where, the one that I've heard of, where it actually fooled the call center into thinking it was a human. And in that case, it already had the credentials. So it wasn't fraud. It was somebody who wanted to call either for fun or convenience. And I think that more and more end users will understand that they have a responsibility for the information and the authority they give their tools. We've seen that first with customers that have had to honor companies that have already had to honor pricing, that's been given. And we have a policy, and I know it's similar to a lot of companies' policies. Your AI usage is your assistant. You're responsible for its content and making sure it's correct and accurate. And I think that will eventually trickle to the consumer side, where it'll be like you're delegating a responsibility, and you still own that responsibility because it's showing up everywhere else.
Yeah, it's like if you give your PIN to your bank card, that's on you, right? So if you give a person, or if you give your AI agent credentials, you're responsible for what that person or that AI agent does.
Right.
And
Yeah,
then-
and that'll
the
be
next
tricky
step
because
is-
I'm sorry.
Go on,
ahead,
Beth.
The next step is, right now agents are going through channels that are designed for humans, but eventually the channels have to be built for agent-to-agent interaction, and then the AI agent presents some sort of a verification card, and so that eliminates that. But you're right, Robert. If it's your assistant, you're still responsible for it.
But what happens if your assistant gets hacked? I mean, I definitely see that type of thing taking place. I think security is going to be huge, and agent hacking is probably going to be a big deal. So that's something that companies are going to have to think about. So we were talking about authorization before. So Brett and Alex Shockley's company Journey AI, I bet they're going to be. They can definitely be moving into this direction, and then maybe other companies popping up that specifically focus on authorizing AI agents rather than individuals.
Absolutely. And okay, so being aware of time, let's wrap up with one final speed round. So I'm going to ask each of our contestants a speed question, and I'd like you to name one thing businesses should do in the next 12 months to prepare for all this. So what's your one piece of advice? And Kevin, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I would say update your information, your website, so that it is more easily accessible by AI assistants and eventually AI agents.
Okay, and we'll go counterclockwise. So John, you're up next.
Test, right? Don't put anything into the market till you've tested it to death, to minimize those, the problems and the liabilities and the risk that comes with it.
Okay, Blair?
Think about the customer. It's still all about the customer. It's not about technology. So still be customer focused.
Robert?
Deal with what is already happening right now at the same time as you're planning for the future.
Perfect. And Beth, bring us home.
Yep. Strategically, it's time to think strategically, which means you got to look at your foundations, your processes, your data, your governance, and your guardrails, so that by the time this comes, you're not scrambling to catch up.
And everyone, thank you all so much. It's been a great session. I will add my final point on this one, which would be to say, don't assume that you can rely on making life difficult for the customer. Don't assume you can rely on customers being lazy. If you're relying on customers just auto-renewing because it's too much effort to change, if you're relying on it being too hard to cancel, if you're relying on your terms and conditions being too complex to read, all of that is going to go away sooner or later. Focus on building those meaningful, solid customer relationships so your customers want to do business with you. Everyone, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure and huge appreciation for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks all for watching.